Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. Now that we've got the scandir stuff figured out, let's move on and figure out how we want to get rid of some of these unwanted things, like, for instance, the hidden stuff. And maybe even also the folders that we don't want, because we don't want to scan a folder, we want to only grab files. So let's go back here, and first thing I want to do is, right now I'm doing a print R on the scandir of image list. I actually need to get image list stored. Right now I've just got it as a pathway. I need to actually get it to become the result of the scan directory. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change that now so that scandir is now actually going to store itself as an array. So let's move this, and we're going to change this and refactor it even a little bit more here. All right, so now what we've done is we're saying that image list is going to be an array. So store directory to be scanned for contents into, let's just say, an array variable. Okay. All right, and so now what we've got is pretty much the same as what we did have in terms of being able to test it, hit refresh, it's the same. But now we actually have the entire contents of the array stored inside of image list. So if we want to do something more than just a print R on it, then we can. Now, if I were to try to, have all of the pictures show up right now by putting it inside of a loop and telling all the stuff to show up inside of an image tag, the problem is that we've got these hidden things and also this folder, so it won't work. So what we need to do is we need to come over here and we need to start looping through image list and trying to remove those items as we come across them. So let's start off first with a for each, and then I'll go backwards and I'll explain something. And I'm putting the basic syntax in here for each, and then we're going to say for each image list, because we're going to scan through, or excuse me, we're going to loop through image list. So for each image list as, and then let's just make the temporary variable name that we're going to use inside the loop. Let's call it file name. And the reason I'm going to do that is because it's actually a file name that we're going to be trying to do something with, okay, in terms of testing or whatever. All right, so for every image list item as file name, that's basically what that's saying, then we're going to do something. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to take those things, and we need to be able to push the items into another array. And this sort of the easiest way to do this is to push them into another array based on the fact that they start with a dot, or whether or not it's a directory. And we need to push them into another array so that we can compare the two arrays and then strip the items that we don't want. All right. So in order to do that, anytime you're going to start using an array inside of a loop, it has to already be declared. So first thing we have to do is come up here before the loop, and I'm going to make a comment, and we're going to say create, or actually I'll say initiate, because that's the actual term. So we're going to initiate an empty array for unwanted items. Okay, and so we're going to call it unwanted. It's pretty straightforward. Oops, got to spell it right. So we're going to say unwanted equals, and we're going to say array, and then it's just going to be empty, right? So this actually, even though there are no items inside of the array, unwanted is going to be an array type of variable because we're telling it to be. All right, so now whenever we start to loop, let's go and make another comment, loop through image list to remove unwanted items. Okay. All right, so now what we can do is every time we find something that starts with a dot or something that's a directory, we can push it into this thing called unwanted. And to do that, we have to first of all find the pattern of the dot. And so to do that, we're going to use a thing called string position. So we're going to ask if, and we're going to put the syntax in here, okay? So we're going to say if strpos, so that's string position. We're going to ask if the string position of the dot, so it's a string, of the dot inside of file name. And all right, so let me type this out and then I'm going to explain it. So the way that string position works is that you look, the second argument right here is the pattern that you're looking for, and you're trying to find this, where is that located in the position of the actual thing that we're looking inside of. So we're looking to see where the dot is inside of file name, and what we're going to be asking is if string position is equal to 0. Okay, because 0 is the first position of anything that, you know, whenever it comes to programming, because numbers will start counting at 0 whenever we're dealing with PHP and with arrays. And what string position does is it basically builds the count of how many characters are inside of file name, and then it goes ahead and finds where that dot is located and saying if the dot is equal to 0. So anything that starts with a dot, any file that starts with a dot, whether it's dot .dsstore, dot whatever, it's going to do something with it. Okay, so now what we can do is if that string position is 0, then we can do this thing called array push. And then the first thing that we're going to use is, what are we pushing it into? Okay, so we're going to push it into unwanted. Okay, so that's the first thing we do. And then the second argument is the thing that we're pushing. So, right, we've got file name. That's the thing that we're pushing. All right, and let me make a comment real quick so that you can see what it is that we're doing. Okay, push item into unwanted array. Let me spell array right. All right. And then here we're going to say, in the beginning of this if statement, we're going to say check to see if item starts with dot. Okay. All right. That's the first thing. And it says if so, push it into the unwanted array. Now, well, all that does is push something into an unwanted array. It doesn't actually take it out. So what we could do, just to test this so far, is what we could come over here and say, I'm going to copy this. Actually, I'm going to copy this, and we're going to say unwanted so far. Okay, and then instead of doing a printar on imageless, we'll do it on unwanted. All right, and so that way we can see which things are inside of unwanted, and we can also look at what imageless currently is still, so that we can do an example. All right, so you can see what's happening, all right, is that the things that are unwanted so far are these. And what's really weird, okay, this is what's really interesting, is that it's also finding this empty folder, even though it's just looking for a dot in the first position, and it's also finding the thing that doesn't have a file extension. That's a strange behavior, and it might not always be like that on all systems, and so we can't really rely completely on the fact that it's pushing this folder in there, okay? But you'll notice that it's definitely pushing anything that starts with a dot into that unwanted thing. All right, so let's also do something just in case, so that we can make sure that it would in fact catch empty folders, or any kind of folder, not just empty folders, but any kind of folder. And let's go ahead and add that additional error checking. Okay, so where it says if string position blah blah blah, right? Well, what I want to do is I want to say go ahead and put an extra set of parentheses around that so that it is discrete and on its own, and then I can put a space and put 2 pipes for the OR logical operator. Okay, and so I can say if the string position of the dot is 0, or if is underscore dir. So if it's a directory, if file name is a directory, okay, then we're going to push it into an unwanted array. So that would be the secondary test, this part right here, so that regardless of what system you're on, it will find directories and push it in there. Okay, so now you can see, like I said before, I'm going to refresh it and there are no errors. That's good. So now you can see that even though the image list still so far has all those things, what it's done so far is it has identified the things in the unwanted array that we don't want. Well, with the exception of the PDF and the GIF, but we'll deal with that later, okay? So that's a good thing so far, all right? That's going to work in our favor. Now what we can do is after we push the items in the unwanted array, the next thing that we can do is we can strip or remove unwanted items, okay, from image list. All right, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use something called array diff. And the way that looks is just like this. And, oops, it's got two F's. Okay, so array underscore diff. And then what we're doing is we're going to first find the array of image list. All right, that's the first thing that we're going to look for the comparison. And then we're going to compare it to unwanted, and the second argument where it says unwanted, it's going to strip anything that is found from unwanted that's also found inside of image list. It's going to strip that out of image list. It basically will subtract anything that you find in unwanted out of image list. Okay, so that's what array diff is going to do. And in fact, if we wanted to, we could change this comment to be a little bit more specific, and you could look at it as if we are saying to compare the current state of image list to the current state of unwanted and strip unwanted items from image list. That's an easier way to understand the syntax. Okay, all right, so if I hit save now and I go back over here and I do a refresh, you'll notice that it looks exactly the same. Well, why is that? Let's look over here and see what we didn't do right. Well, the thing is that array push will automatically make a change. It'll automatically do something, all right? It automatically changes an array. Whereas array diff, like what I would actually have to do at this point is I would have to actually reassign image list to constantly, every time it loops through, to be the difference of itself minus unwanted. So that's the difference, is that here on image diff, I have to actually say that image list is equal to the difference of itself minus the unwanted array item. Okay, so that's the difference of how you would have to do this line versus the array push line. Okay, all right, so basically let me walk through this one more time. Okay, so what I'm doing, let's start at the very top of the loop, is I'm saying, okay, for every file name that you find inside of image list, basically, okay, we're going to do a quick check. We're going to say if the string position of the dot in the file name is equal to 0, or if the file name is a directory, then we want to go ahead and add or push the file name into the unwanted array. And then the next thing that we need to do is compare the two arrays so that as we are currently iterating through each item, we go ahead and reassign image list actively while we're inside the loop and say image list is now the difference of itself minus the unwanted item. And so that automatically just will strip those things out actively as we go through it. And if I save that now and I hit refresh, then you see it does in fact remove all of these things so that it changes it on the fly, which is pretty cool. That's something that's really useful, and that's how you can strip those things out. And this is also how you can test to see what they look like using these tools right here with the print R and so forth. Okay.